process. And I know there's parents out there that are cringing going, oh my gosh, like that's a lot of work. Yes, but the kids are worth it.
That's your job as a parent, to
Yes.
teach them how the real world works.
But I hear a lot of people say it's just easier if I clean it up. Sure, it's easier on you, but it's more work for them in the long run, because if you don't teach your kids how to be adults, life is going to teach them. And it's going to be a hell of a lot more painful if life teaches them than if you just teach them something simple like that. Sam, after that, was pretty good. There was a couple times that I went, Sam, do you want to start losing? No, I don't want to start losing these things. And he laughs about it now. He actually just got married this weekend. And
yes, I saw the pictures.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Absolutely. He's found his soulmate. I absolutely love having her in the family. But he laughs and jokes about that now. But it left a lasting impression, and it's made him really into more of an adult. And we did similar things like that with each of the kids.
Well, my kids do not laugh about the experience from what I was just going to share with you. And that is that when I told them school is school and that's your job, the next day I'm like, okay, so tomorrow you're going to experience what the real world is like. You're going to have an 8-hour workday. And here's your list of things that you're going to have to do around the house, which includes pulling out the washer and dryer and cleaning the floors underneath, which includes cleaning the patio with brushes. Everything you can imagine. Now, here's the deal. You're going to start at this time. You're going to get a 15-minute break midway through. You're going to have lunch, and then you're going to have a 15-minute break at the end. At the end of the day, as your manager, I'm going to inspect your work. And if it's not up to par, you're going to do the same thing again the next day. And you're going to do it over and over and again until you do it right. So I suggest you do it right tomorrow. So the next day, I got up as their boss, started the clock, made them clock in. And all day long, they had to do their jobs. And then at the end, I came in and inspected them, and they were nervous. They were scared. They were like, Mommy, is it good? I'm like, this could be a little bit better. They're like, okay, we'll do it right now. Right now, we'll do it right now. How does it need to be better? Just
overtime.
Better, right? And so at the end, they were totally exhausted. And I sat down with them and I said, okay, is it easier right now in your life for you to do your schoolwork and do it well? Or do you want to live the life that you live today for the rest of your life? They're like, we'll do our schoolwork. Never again did I ever have to ask them about homework. Never did I ever have to ask them about anything, because they knew there was going to be a consequence to their choice. Now, fast forward a couple years later, my oldest daughter has all of her guy friends lined up on the couch when I walk in the door. And she's explaining consequences versus rewards.
I thought you were going to say she had them working for 8 hours the next day.
No, she was like, this is how life works. It's all about consequences versus rewards, and everything you choose has a consequence, a potential consequence, and a potential reward. And you have to make the decision whether the potential reward is worth the potential consequence, because either of them can happen at any time. And she's like preaching to these kids. Okay. So then about 2 months later, this is my oldest daughter. She's the really feisty one. And she comes to me and she's like, okay, Mom, yesterday I made a choice and I outweighed the consequences versus the rewards. And I decided that the potential reward was worth the potential consequence. So this is what I did. Give me my consequence. I just sat there and
what did you do?
I'm trying not to laugh inside. Like, wow. Okay. Like, I don't even know that I can give you a consequence at this point, because that was so mature, right? For this 14-year-old standing in front of me. And I'm like, okay, what do you think your consequence should be? And she's like, well, I think it should be this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay. Now, mind you, she had given herself far worse of a consequence than I ever would have given her.
Yeah.
And she accepted it. She walked away. No argument, no anything. Like, I made a choice. It was worth it. I had fun. And I'm willing to take the consequence for that.
Yeah, moments like that it pays it back, all the work that you did. I actually had my grandson. Yes, I have a grandson.
Really?
I was 17 when I started having kids. So
okay.
I'm a young dad and now a young grandpa.
Okay.
And I remember he got in trouble and I put him in bed And after about 5 minutes, I went in there to check on him, and cutest thing ever, because my kids were teaching their kids now the same thing about consequences. And he looks up at me, he calls me Papos. And he goes, Papos, I don't like bad consequences. I only like good consequences. So he goes, I'm taking the bad consequences out of your heart and only putting good consequences in your heart. Sweetest thing ever.
Aww.
But he was grasping it. He was grasping that when you make decisions, there are consequences, both good and bad. Which ones do you want to earn?
Sure.
It was just powerful. Only 5 years old when he was getting that. But yeah, those moments are precious. That makes you go, okay, all the exhausting work that I did is worth it. Absolutely
I'm
worth
doing
it.
a good job somewhere along the line, right?
Yeah.
I love that. So I think that parents today, they get caught up in definitely their kids not having consequences. I can't tell you how many parents I know that their child gets in trouble in school and they run to their rescue. They get in trouble with the law. They bail them
And I will
out.
say, if a parent acts like that, it is the ultimate form of ego. It is all about you, and you are being absolutely selfish. If you are the one that pays the consequences for your kids' choices completely. Now, I'm not saying, you're not there to help them and dust them off and pat their butt and get them up and moving. But if you're the one that steps in and takes all the consequences and you're the one that deals with it, you're ruining your kids. You're being a selfish, ego-driven person by parenting that way, period. It's absolutely, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're making it about you and you being the hero than it is about actually caring about the growth and potential of your children.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. And I think that we live in a whole society of that today where kids are not experiencing the consequences of their actions.
Everybody gets a trophy. I
Yep.
hate,
Everybody gets a
absolutely
trophy.
abhor that. Yep.
And everybody gets bailed out and you can do no wrong in your parents' eyes. And it's unbelievable to me because what type of generation are we raising for later? And it's kids who don't understand that there are choices that you have to make in life and that there are consequences
Yep.
to our actions. And the consequence may not happen immediately. It could come 2 years later. It doesn't matter. It's still there. And it's always going to hang over you. The other part about that is too, your choices can also create regrets in your life.
Yep. And this,
And that
when
can keep going.
when you go through a divorce, when you go through a major life trauma, breakup, whatever you want to call it, your kids will feel it, obviously, because it's part of them having to shift their idea of how things should be,
Mm-hmm.
and finally accepting reality that you don't always get what you want and life does not always feel good. um, Instead of looking at it from an ego point of view where you feel guilty for having made whatever bad decision you made, or for whatever happened that's ending the marriage, um, you have to almost start looking at it like it's an opportunity. This is an opportunity to sit down with the kids and work through this and help them not take it on as their own responsibility, except to take their own responsibility for themselves.
Right.
If you feel guilty about it, and I'll be real, I felt guilty. I did. But you have to stop and go, why? Why am I feeling guilty? What's going to be the best decision for the family, here in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always easy to make when you're in the middle of something that's hugely emotional and people are feeling hurt and wanting to really kind of lash back out. But
we need to talk about that a little bit. So there is rules of play when you're divorced with children. And one of those big rules that should be in play is don't bash their other parent.
ooh,
You should never bash the other parent to your children.
I know a lot of parents, and this is so unhealthy, that use their kids as tools to try and hurt the other one.
Absolutely.
Again, we'll talk about narcissism on another episode, but narcissists are huge like this. When they stop being able to punish and abuse their victim, they look for the flying monkeys, which is usually friends, family, and especially children, to try and hurt the other one. And they can be very, very, very effective at it. But if you do that, again, that is one of the most ultimate forms of ego and even abuse of the kids.
Absolutely. And the other thing too with that is do not use your children to communicate with your ex.
No,
Your communication should be between you and them.
Yeah.
Okay. The children should not be relaying messages.
Well, and I agree with you on that. And especially if I'm hearing you the way you're with what you're trying to say with that. I do know of some pretty unhealthy breakups where the spouses should really not be communicating.
Right.
And it also depends on the
There's
age.
email.
Yes, there's email, and it also depends on the age of the children. Because I have some people that they just they can't talk to their ex whatsoever. Now, depends on the communication though. If it's like arranging visitation and whatnot, I don't know. That might be something you can work through the kids with. But
I don't think it should be with the kids. My boyfriend, his kids are 12 and 15. And he tries very hard to communicate with their mom whenever, there's a schedule shift or who's picking them up, who's taking them home. He tries to communicate with her. And that's really how it should be, because what we found is, especially the 12-year-old gets really, really stressed out if he receives a message from his mom to ask his dad something. He starts to get like really, really stressed out. She doesn't mean it that way. It's not vindictive on her side at all. She's just, just communicating through the son. But the reality is it shouldn't be done. It should be between parent and parent, whether it's text, whether it's an email, however you communicate best and effectively and not fighting.
So if you have an ex, because I know we're going to have people that are going to be like, well, wait a minute, my situation's different. If you have an ex that every single type of communication you have with them is all about trying to hurt you, how do you effectively co-parent with that?
Okay, so that's interesting because my daughters, their father, had a very difficult time communicating with me and would say horrible things and, wanted to get into a fight with me and whatever the case may be. And I probably was that way with him to a degree at first, but I realized very early on in going through a parenting, a divorce parenting class that, you can't do that. And we had to find a way to just say, just to text and just be like, okay, I'm not getting into any of this with you. I'm not responding to any of that. I am talking about the children. They're on their way over because we bought a home 10 doors down from each other, which was not smart.
I don't know if I could do that.
Well, we did it so that the kids, their school would be the same. The bus would be the same. Like everything would be the same with the kids and they could just walk between the houses. Right. It didn't turn out that way. It did not. Thought I was being smart. It did not turn out that way. It's okay. Actually, it turned out that my oldest stopped going over there at 8 years old. I had counselors involved to try to help them learn how to communicate better, not for me and the kids, but for him and the kids, because I wanted them to have their father in their life. I felt like it was really important. I get very angry at moms out there that try to keep their kids from their fathers.
Yes.
I think it's wrong. I think that it doesn't matter what issues you have with your ex, whether it's male or female, that is not the issue of the children. It's not their fault. Therefore, they should never feel like they're in the middle. And I feel like, parents that do that and keep their kids from the other spouse, the ex is a form of abuse in and of itself. And it's preventing rightful parents to be parents of their children.
Yep.
And I don't agree with that. So I personally paid for the counselor for him to go with my children to try to have an honest, real relationship with the kids. It didn't go well with my oldest. It did with my youngest for a long time, but sadly today he does not speak to either of them. And that's very sad to me. They deserve to know their father. So
I might argue with that too. I might argue with that statement.
Good, bad, or indifferent, it's their father.
Yeah, but
they need to formulate who they believe he is on their own and not from influence from me.
I totally agree with that. I don't believe in owing loyalty because of blood. Period.
Right.
Abuse is abuse. Unhealthy is unhealthy, regardless of